Welcome to the Brady Marcs Podcast with your host Brady Yashia from Brady Marcs Buyers Advisory. Enjoy discussions with a variety of guests and pioneers from diverse backgrounds, each sharing their unique perspectives on property, business, industry and more.
David Walker is the principal of Ray White Upper North Shore, leading a team that spans 6 offices, leading one of the most awarded real estate teams in Australia. He's Ray White's #1 selling principal. He has been awarded Agency of the Year many times over and is a distinguished Ray White Chairman's Elite Business Leader. With 20 years' experience as a licensed agent, David continues to set the bar higher, not only for emerging talent, but for the best in the business alike. Welcome, Dave. It's great to have you here today.
Thanks for having me.
So I know that you have been a very successful agent for a long time, but for the listeners out there, could you please tell us how you began in the real estate arena?
Yeah, it was sort of a bit by mistake. I was 18 years old, fresh out of school, working down on the Northern Beaches in a friend's nursery, and he was shutting his nursery down just before Christmas to get into real estate in January. And he and I had some sales challenges to sell some plants and things down there, and I ended up beating him in most of the challenges. And he said, "You've got sales skills. Why don't you come down and get a job in real estate for a little while," where he was working just to pay my way through a year off from before going to uni the next year. And so anyway, I thought it was a good idea. I'd always loved houses, the idea of houses. I was going to be going to uni to do property economics, so it was a space I was really interested in. I went and had an interview with the old school principal down there in DY, and he did the old sales thing of asking me to sell him a pen, and and at the age of 18, he offered me a job. I was the youngest person he'd employed by over 15 years, so it was the youngest person by a long way he'd ever employed. So started that, and then the first year I was the Young Achiever of the Year in the First National Group, and the rest is history.
Geez, that's incredible. So I heard that somewhere along the way you started a real estate business in a garage.
That's
Do you
right.
want to tell us a little bit about that?
Well, that's where Upper North Shore was created. It was actually created in the garage.
The Ray White Upper North Shore.
Yeah, so it was Ray White Wahroonga. We originally I went into business partnership with my old principal, Peter Sutton, who owned Ray White Turramurra, and I wanted to do something new and open Ray White Wahroonga, but we just couldn't get in any space. Wahroonga's one of the most tightly held retail spaces in Sydney, so it was difficult to find a space. So we put a Ray White Wahroonga sign on the door of the garage, and we started in there, me and two associates, and that's how it all started.
So how do you go from starting a business in a garage to being one of the most awarded, top-performing sales agents and agencies in the country?
Look, sometimes I pinch myself at what we've all done in the last 9 years since we opened Ray White Wahroonga. But the thing I've always held very close to me is, I guess, the motto that's all about getting the right people. We have a no dickheads policy within our business, and so getting the right people was so important. So along the way, we targeted the right people with that would fit into the culture, people that I enjoyed spending time with, people that were good people, inherently good people. Some agents that were working in other businesses that weren't doing as well as what I thought they could be doing, and we were able to get them across. And some of the people within the business now were agents who were writing 200, 300,000. Now they're writing well over $1 million a year, and that's just putting them in an environment surrounded by lots of good people doing really good things.
Yeah. So culture, good people, and having fun along the way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer of having fun and believing in people. I think it's very important. Some people get lost along the way. How do you define success?
Success to me isn't necessarily a financial thing or anything like that. It's achieving whatever goals you set yourself. And everyone's goals are different. We've got people within the business who are wanting to, it's all about writing more business. We've got people who want to get the work-life balance. We've got people that are actually wanting to do less than what they're doing so they can spend more time at home or with kids, and we support everyone's individual goals. So what makes somebody successful is very different to what might make another person successful. So it's really not trying to fit everyone in the same box. And if you can find out truly what somebody wants to achieve and tap into that, that's where you really get success, I think.
Yeah, it's about understanding.
Yeah.
So we all have dealt with multiple personalities in the real estate world.
Yes, we have.
Some vendors are very easy and some are very difficult. What would you say is a good client experience for a vendor?
Well, again, for a vendor, they want to, everyone relates our industry back to price, but I think pricing secondary to the overall feeling somebody gets when they stand back and put a sold sticker on a signboard and realizing they've done everything possible to get the best outcome. So, and I think that comes down to sometimes some clients go for the cheapest agent. Sometimes they go with an agent that might have overpromised. Ultimately, I would like to think that when our clients stand back and look up at their signboard, they realize that they couldn't have gone for a better agency, they couldn't have gone for a better agent, and everything possible was done to get the best outcome. And I think that that's what we provide as a business. Whereas I think with maybe some competitors, a vendor might stand back and think, I wonder what would have happened if we had have used the leading agency rather than the cheapest agency.
So it's not a transactional thing.
No, it never is.
It's about the client for life.
Yeah. And it's also realizing this process isn't about us as agents. It's about the client. It's about houses. Some of them have owned for over 50 years. Some of them, it's a really happy experience because they're upsizing into a new home. Some, it's a really stressful experience. It could be a death, divorce, or financial problems. So it's all about the client. Unfortunately, some people in this industry as agents have made the experience about them, whereas I think ultimately it's about the client.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So then what would make a happy client?
Again, it's all different. A happy client is somebody who feels like the outcome that's been achieved is the best outcome possible. I think that's a happy client. Happy client feels like they've been serviced, feels that they've gotten the outcome in the right way, feels like that everything's been done with, doing it where you can know that you haven't done it in a way that's deceived or been deceptive. It's all been done in the right way.
Yeah. So, Dave, you're at the top of your game. What are your non-negotiables for being a successful elite agent?
Well, that's a tough one. Non-negotiables are different every day. So for me personally, on a personal level, my non-negotiables are trying to look after my health, trying to be present for my family, trying to be present for people within the business, always be there, and everyone knows that I'm contactable, and am present with everybody who I'm there speaking with. So non-negotiables for me is not necessarily back to the basics of phone calls, or it's not about the things that might have been at the beginning of my career. It might have been around all numbers and door knocking and phone calls and all of that sort of stuff. Now it comes down to actually getting value out of the time that I spend with each person, and not wasting any opportunity, because I've got a lot going on in each and every day. So I don't want to waste an hour at an appointment if it's not an appointment that's going to go anywhere. I don't want to sit down with anybody if I'm not giving them the time they deserve, if I'm distracted. So that's biggest non-negotiables is actually just being present.
Yeah, being present is so important. So what has made you such a successful agent?
I just think I do work hard, but I also have tried to do everything in a genuine way, whereas I think what you see is what you get with me. And clients, I think, feel that. I've always made it a point of trying to the best of my ability to give everybody the outcome or the information that I believe to be the truth, rather than just being an agent that goes in and overpromises. I'll go in and be realistic, which has sometimes lost me business. But in over a 20-year period, you get more business than you lose because you start getting a reputation. And on the Upper North Shore, your reputation can spread very, very quickly, in a positive and negative way.
Yeah, well, I've certainly enjoyed working with you over the years. And I even remember an auction on a Sunday quite a few years ago that I was bidding for a client out in Turramurra, and you worked for the vendor, but you were also very present for the buyers. So, I can absolutely attest to your professional manners
Thank you.
and your ethical way of being an agent. So myself as well, being in the industry for quite a long time, I've had so many client interactions with buyers, vendors, multiple different people, and there's lots of memorable occasions. Some are good, some are bad. What comes to mind as one of your most memorable occasions that you've had with a client?
I think there's probably too many to name individually. I think for some people, when you're selling a house and it's their biggest asset, getting, an extra 100,000, 200,000 or well and truly above expectations can be life-changing for people, financially life-changing. I did have a close friend who I sold for about 18 months ago now. They had their daughter who had passed away, who was friends with my son, and she was only 5 at the time. And they were selling to move to Brisbane, and the house that we sold for them, it sold for well and truly above everyone's expectation. So it was really, they'd had such a hard couple of years after their daughter had passed away, and so it was really nice for something to go right for them. So that was something close to my heart, because it was also personal friends as well that we'd been through everything with them. So that was a really nice situation when they'd just been really battling everything that they'd had behind them in the last few years. So that was probably up there.
Yeah, a good news story.
Yeah.
So you've expanded from 1 office to 6 offices across the Upper North Shore. How do you grow a team whilst maintaining your sense of values?
It's all about, as I said earlier, the people. So if you get the right people, we don't grow our business unless it's with the right people. So I think if you get the right people, it makes it a lot easier to keep your values strong. If somebody doesn't align with our values, then they're not going to be in the business long term, and they're probably not going to grow in the right way with the business. So every decision we make comes back to, is it the right decision for the business, people within the business, and is it not just a decision based around growing? Is it a decision around, is this going to be better for the people within the business? So I think with that in mind, if you make decisions for longer term outcomes rather than just short term gratification, then you're going to probably have a successful business or successful career.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. And culture is so important, as we mentioned a little bit earlier. So how do you evolve the culture?
Well, we've got some values within our business all around respect, all about having fun, but also being the best person you could possibly be, and getting and hitting the goals you want to hit. So if you have some strict values and that everybody sort of buys into, and they're not just values that we came up with, that as a business we sort of spent a long time working out what was important to everybody. So if everything comes back to those 3 key values, then ultimately I think the people will buy into it and you can build a culture around it.
Yeah. Have you had any mentors along the way that have stood out and made them mark on you?
Yeah, look, there's been plenty. I've been asked that a bit. There's probably not one person in particular, but I feel like I've gotten a lot from so many different people over the years. You've got some amazing business leaders within our industry. Like when I was a younger person, at 18 years old, I remember going and listening to John McGrath speak, and I was enamored with, his passion for the industry and the way he thought bigger than everyone else did at the time. So he was always trying to be better and change things, and really was thinking outside the square, which I loved. And I'll never forget that energy that he had around that. And then there's been some wonderful trainers over the years that I've come into contact with that you learn a lot, but probably more it's the personal relationships on one-to-one within people within the business, people that I've been close to, my parents. I learn a lot from everyone that I try and meet, and always try and find people doing better than what I'm doing so I can then learn from them. Even lots of business owners, especially within the Ray White Group, a lot of principals from other areas that I spend a lot of time with, and just understanding how they run their businesses. So there's been a huge amount of big influences in my life.
Yeah, and I'm sure you're learning all the time.
Yes.
It's a game that you never stop learning.
Yeah.
And I noticed that you talk about being passionate. Passion is something that if you don't have, you're not going to go far in this industry. So are there any specific lessons that you've learned along the way that you'd like to share with the listeners?
I guess I've learned a lot about people. Like I find real estate almost like it's a psychology into the best and worst of people. There's been people I've invested a huge amount of time in that really, when it comes down to it, it's only about for them back pocket rather than, being a person that, is going to be a good person within the business. So there's also people that, you come into contact with that can be somebody to you and another person to other people. So it's really important to try and get an overall perspective on everybody. But lessons-wise, I think I'm always learning. You can't not be learning in what we do, because you're seeing the best and worst of people, and you're generally part of some of the biggest moments in people's lives when it comes to selling a house, because it's one of the top 3 stressful things you can do. So,
Yes.
But yeah, I'm always learning, and I think every single day something will shock me in a good or bad way. So, you never stop growing and learning.
No, and I think that's what is the secret to the success of being a good agent, is constantly learning. I mean, I still feel like I'm learning all the time, and I love it.
Yeah.
One of the things that really inspires me about you, and I would like to know, and I'm sure a lot of the listeners would like to know, the transition from being a selling agent to a principal. How did you mentally work through that, and what was the biggest challenge through that transition?
Yeah, so interestingly now, with a bit of hindsight, you look back and you look at why you make decisions. At the time, I think becoming a principal for me was probably more around having a little bit of more autonomy within my world and my life. And I think a lot of people make decisions on becoming business owners maybe for the wrong reasons, because they want to be the boss or they want to be, head honcho. I think from what I see, I would say 80% of principals would make more money if they were just listing and selling real estate by themselves. And so if I had my time again, I would do it all the same in terms of becoming a principal. But I think ultimately, if you're trying to look at whether you want to be business owner or not, it's not about money. It's all about the people who are the best business owners and best leaders are the ones that will actually get the biggest kick out of seeing other people do well. And that's the one thing I didn't realize back when I did this. When we first opened the business, it was all about me writing more business as a principal and growing my own individual business. And it wasn't until I actually started getting a kick out of seeing people within my team step up to become agents, growing their own teams. And then I thought I was getting more thrill out of helping and watching and doing that than I was out of doing my own stuff. And to this day, I am happier to see somebody have a successful auction or call me with some great news about winning a listing, or seeing somebody kicking goals or hitting their own goals. That gives me more of a thrill than me doing it myself.
Yeah.
And so that's when you talk about passion, that's the stuff that I get passionate about.
It's so rewarding when you see your team members performing and doing well. It's a really good feeling.
Yeah. The issue though, if you stand back and you probably get more of a front row seat to this, but from my perception of looking outside of looking in on a lot of principals is they're doing it to control rather than doing it to inspire. There was a prominent principal who who had a theory that you're better off having 10 average agents who wouldn't do that well rather than having 3 or 4 really good agents, because you could then control them and they'd all write average amount. They'd never want to leave because they'd never feel good enough to leave, or they'd never want to do their own thing. Whereas the way that I look at it, I want everyone to be superstars in their own mind. But if you can have then a culture around people being surrounded by the best people, then people wouldn't want to leave as well. But I do think, a lot of principals out there are probably principals for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, I love that, being superstars. That's great. So you work with some of the most successful agents within your team. What are some of the characteristics of the agents that do really well?
Again, all different. Everyone's got their own styles. I think what we talked about earlier, which is just having a genuine care and respect for your client. If clients can see that you do care, whether the campaign's going to plan or not to plan, if they understand that you're doing everything you possibly can, you're keeping them informed, you're working your backside off for them, then the outcome, whether it is at expectations, above, below, there won't be anyone saying, well, you could have or should have done this. Yeah. So I think if you look at some of the personalities and people, they've all got different attributes that I love, but they're all very different. I don't think there's a key metric to why somebody is successful or not successful, because everyone is so different.
Yes, and it's being able to understand each person's difference and their characteristics.
Yes, yeah.
So the real estate arena is very appealing to a lot of young people. What would your advice be to someone looking to get into the real estate industry?
Well, it would be find a good agent and agency and put in 3 to 5 years of really, really hard work doing hard stuff. I think a lot of the perception of our industry is it's just lattes and BMWs, and it's a perception that I think is unwarranted, because the people that do the best in our industry work the hardest. And when I say work the hardest, it's not putting in the most hours, but it's doing stuff when no one's watching. The people that do really well, especially the younger people, the associates, they're the ones that they're not doing things for gratification from their seniors or their principals. It's doing stuff because they want to get results, and everyone's in competition with themselves. They're not in competition with anyone else. And so the people that do really well understand that, and they're just picking up the phones. They're making difficult calls. They're knocking on doors. They're doing all the unpretty things that you need to get your hands dirty when you're in that early stages of your career. But if you can find a good mentor, a good agent to work for, and put in the 3 to 5 years of hard work, you'll set your whole career up.
Yeah. So putting in the hard yards goes a long way.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no shortcuts. Anyone that tries to make shortcuts or think that Instagram's going to get you a successful real estate career is kidding themselves. Real estate is one of the hardest industries to break into, but once you do, it's one of the most rewarding as well. So, but as we know, 80% of people doing real estate today won't be doing it in 5 years' time, which is a pretty scary thought. It's one of the highest turnover industries in the country. But I think it's because most people these days don't want to do the hard work. And when I started in real estate 20 years ago, I spent 12 months literally out door knocking a whole suburb every single day for 6 hours a day, because I didn't know anything different. And then I'd come back, and it was before computers. You'd had databases, so I was writing my cards that we'd put people's names and numbers and write it down, and I'd have a whole card system set up of every single contact. And in the first 12 months, I had a database of 2,500 people that I was then speaking to, and just went from strength to strength because I just did the hard work, but I didn't realize that no one else was really doing it.
Yeah, it's incredible that. So talking about the market, shifting the pace a little bit now, there's so many mixed messages out there in the marketplace. What would your advice be to any vendors that are looking to sell in the next few months?
I wouldn't try and judge too far down the track. I think people get into trouble when they start trying to predict what's going to happen, because ultimately no one knows. my take on the market is there's still not a huge amount of stock that's out there. There's a bit more stock that's on the market.
I'm just going to jump in and I'm going to say that we are in August of 2023.
Yes. There's a bit, the perception is there's more on the market, but it's just sitting there for a little bit longer, because I think now the interest rates with going up 12 times in a row, I think that people are starting to feel the pinch a little bit on that. So people aren't as bullish on just jumping in and paying too much for things, because they're a little bit more price sensitive. In our area, where we are lucky in the sense that most people aren't getting 80% mortgages. So it's people wanting to live for the next 20, 30 years and bring their families up. So they want to make an informed decision, and they're still wanting to buy because people are still having kids and needing bigger houses, and we live in the best part of the best city of the best country in the world. So we're always going to have demand there. It looks like interest rates have been paused, probably will be again for the short term, but no one can really look much further than that. I think if you're buying something, doing the right research, you found yourself the right buyer's agent,
Yes.
you'll be able to then buy a property for a decent price. I think prices have already pulled back probably 5% from where they were 3 months ago, just on people that are now starting to realise that it's not as bullish as what it was. But I also don't think it's dropping a huge amount more either. Maybe in some areas it might, if people are a little bit more price sensitive to the interest rates, but on the Upper North Shore, there's still going to be strong demand. So, and spring's always a really good time to sell your property, because gardens are looking beautiful, and people are starting to look to get into different school catchments for next year. So there'll be a lot of buyers looking out during the spring period, and it's all going to come down to how much stock is on the market. I thought there would be a lot more stock than there is right now, but there's just not that many people wanting to get out of the Upper North Shore.
Yes, people love the Upper North Shore. Yeah. Do you often work with buyers agents?
Yeah, look, there's lots of buyers agents who have come into the market. I guess the buyers agents industry, as you know, is a little bit like the real estate industry, that when in the market that we've been in that has been tight for stock, there's lots of people that thought, I can become a buyer's agent, or agents who didn't sell much because there was not much stock around, then went and jumped in to become a buyer's agent. But there's only a few select good buyer's agents that around here. And I think, like our industry, the real estate industry, a lot of people, if stock does start freeing up a little bit, then you might not have as much competition within the buyer's agency space.
Yeah. So I predicted 5 years ago that 1 in 10 people will be using a buyer's agent. So now I'm going to predict that within the next 5 years, 1 in 5 people will be using a buyer's agent. What do you think?
I wouldn't be surprised. Where you look at the eastern suburbs, from what I hear, they're probably already at 1 in 5. And the North Shore is a little bit, I guess, slow to react in some things. But it's becoming more and more popular, especially because people are so time poor these days, and because it's becoming more and more difficult to really navigate the real estate space. So if people are time poor and need the help doing it, then absolutely I can see it becoming more and more common.
Yeah. Well, we hope so. So real estate is 24/7 and the pace can be quite crazy at times. How do you maintain balance?
Just putting my priorities in the right space. So, spending time with the family, and that's, number one. The thing I love about the industry is I live 5 minutes from where I work. So, I get to see my kids every morning, get to see them every afternoon. And yes, sometimes you have to do a couple of late appointments, but if I have a late appointment, I'll go home first to see the kids before I go out to the late appointment. So it's just getting priorities right. And if you look at our industry, a lot of people do tend to make it about them rather than actually being real and understanding that the only people that care truly for you are the ones closest to you. So if you get those priorities right, then everything else falls into place. You get the priorities within the business and the people within the business, spending time with people in the business and making them feel respected and heard. They're the priorities that I spend the most amount of time on.
Yeah, it's important.
Yeah.
And how do you unwind?
I like my sport, my music, friends, hanging out with friends, hanging out with my wife. My wife and I try and spend one day together each week, like without anyone else. So go out for lunch when kids are at school. So we just I unwind in those ways. So I'm one of 5 kids as well. So I've got a big family, and so see them all the time as well. But I'm pretty simple.
Yeah. So we know that you absolutely adore your wife and your kids. Another thing that I found out about you is that you were a champion chess player. But what is something that people who are not close to you don't know about you?
I did play chess back in the day. The New South Wales junior chess champion back in 1995. So it was a long time ago. But I'm a huge John Mayer fan. So I'm going to be flying to New York to watch him play at a show in the school holidays. So I'm looking forward to that. But that's really and massive Sydney Swans fan. So they're on the verge of potentially making finals if they can win the next few games. So, but that's about it, I would think.
Yeah, so a lot of exciting things in place.
Absolutely.
So where do you derive your inspiration from?
I think ultimately inspiration comes in the interactions you have every day. So I don't have a vision board or anything like that I get up and look at every day. But I get inspiration out of different situations, but also I'm always trying to be better, a better person, a better husband, a better dad, a better, ultimately a better leader if I can be, with just every interaction you have, because I think it's not one thing you do, it's all these little things you do along the way that will be what defines you.
Yes. So what would you say is your favourite quote?
Well, nothing worth doing is ever easy. And that's why I've always had the view that if you can take on the hard things for the day early, whether it's a hard meeting, hard phone call, or whether it, when I was younger, getting prospecting out of the way, doing the stuff that no one wants to be doing, if you can get that out of the way early, then you're going to have a good day. Every day you've got to get outcomes for your clients. So it's calling, the buyers back that are interested, following up people. It's doing all of the unpretty stuff, but doing the hard stuff, because if everyone was doing the hard stuff, then the industry would be far more competitive. But I think most people these days just try and take the easy options.
Yeah, such great advice. So if someone wants to get in touch with you, any of the listeners, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Call me directly on the mobile or email me. And we're, it's real estate, so we're always 24/7 and easily contactable.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's been amazing.
Oh, it's my absolute pleasure.